Welcome back. Now, we may have just entered autumn, but data from South Africa's Crop Estimates Committee already suggests that summer crop production in terms of grain and oilseeds may be bleak. This due to unfavourable weather conditions, which have raised concerns about a possible surge in food price inflation. Wandile Sihlobo, who's chief economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa, says that the appropriate response by government is to actually do nothing. And this is an intervention that may have unintended consequences for the next production season. Wandile joins us now with more detail. Wandile, a pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Noltando. I think the appropriate response, Noltando, is to do nothing with regards to intervention in the markets as to whether maybe to stop exports or to put price caps when you see that prices are surging on commodities. But when we look broader than that and saying, okay, but for communities that may be in hunger and needing some support, I think any form of a household support is always welcome, but also for distressed farmers. But we must do nothing in as far as controlling prices or export controls.
I'm keen to actually speak about maybe what we are seeing in terms of the drought and how that has affected crop estimates, that then prompts us to have a conversation about what we might see with pricing and possible interventions for it.
I think, Notando, the season started fairly well. We saw that South Africa received a good rainfall when the season started in October last year, and farmers were able to plant, and they planted actually more area within the 2023-24 production compared to the previous season. And it seemed as if we were going to have a decent summer crop harvest. It is only from around about February where we just didn't receive any rainfall. And from February to March, that's a critical period for summer crops in South Africa, because that's where the crop is pollinating or flowering, to an extent that now when you look at the numbers that are out there, it shows that we may see our overall summer crop harvest being down by 21%, just being over 15 million tons that we're expecting. Of course, maize is taking a huge knock on that. Soy and sunflower are some of the crops that are seeing a significant decline compared to what we produced in a previous season. But I think the major impact is primarily in the white maize producing region, in the western side and central regions of South Africa, which is why look at the maize prices on Safex today, you will realize that there's almost 1,000 rand differential per ton between white maize and yellow maize, and it speaks those difficulties on the white areas.
I'm actually going to maybe spend some time, Wandile, just speaking about the issue of climate change and agriculture. Even around the continent, we saw in Kenya, they're just recovered from a drought. We're seeing it here in South Africa. Is there a way in which the industry can proactively respond to this? I mean, considering the risk that it does pose on food price inflation and maybe even food security?
The challenge that we are in now is because we are affected by an El Nino-induced drought. In a way, entire Southern Africa is under a difficult strain. Zambia, by the end of February, they're telling us that half of their maize crop is already been destroyed by the heat and dryness. Zimbabwe, they were talking about needing to import over 1 million tons of maize. And this is the trend that we are seeing across the Southern Africa region. And in fact, I would even say South Africa is in a reasonably better condition in terms of the food supply, because we still have sufficient for ourselves compared to our neighbors. All this goes to your point of saying climate change is increasingly becoming a challenge. And I think what we need to be considering is really the scientists breeding some seed varieties that can be able to withstand some of these climatic conditions and also have a shorter growing period than the current varieties that we currently are at the moment.
What also concerns me quite a bit, Wandile, and I want to get your thoughts on it, is the issue of white maize. I think you've touched on it. And that's our staple here in South Africa and Southern Africa, whether it's papo, sadza, whatever we make mention of. We really need white maize here. So let's just talk about that, and as it pertains to the food basket, as it pertains to the inflation, basket in South Africa, and just maybe the ability for us to ensure that we have enough for the region, because of course we're all interlinked.
As South Africa, we certainly do have sufficient maize for ourselves, at least if the numbers that are there materializes, because we know that we may have just over 6 million tons of maize, and that will be enough and leave us with a little bit to export to the region. But I think for the region, this is where the problem begins, because outside in the world, there's a lot of maize that is available. I mean, the International Grains Council tells us that the global maize production for the current season, it's around about 1.2 billion tons. That's up 6% from the previous year. But the challenge we have is that roughly 95% or so of the globally traded maize is yellow maize. And as the region in Africa, we need white maize. And I think the only country outside our region that is a significant producer of white maize is actually Mexico. And now we have to think then to say, can Mexico produce more so that those in the region that need maize can actually import from Mexico? And I think this is also the challenge when you consider the food price inflation basket in South Africa, that where we worry a lot is primarily about the white maize products, but less so when you consider wheat and you consider vegetable oils, fruits and vegetables. Because on those, what has made South Africa to be in a better position is because all of our fruit and vegetable is under irrigation, and the dam levels have been healthy from the early summer rainfall. So we're able to have a reasonable good crop there. Elsewhere in the world, vegetable prices are coming down nicely. And if you also look at the wheat and the rice prices are moderating nicely, all of which is beneficial for South Africa, assuming the rand to the US dollar remains at these fair levels that we're seeing.
Wandile, that's all we have time for today, but keen to keep having this conversation. I think it's matters of national importance that we discuss here with food price inflation. Thank you for your time. That was Wandile Sihlobo, Chief Economist of the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa.